My name's Kerri Shying. I'm a Wiradjuri woman. If you're looking at me, then, well, if you're not looking at me, I'm a light-skinned woman. I've got short hair that's dyed at the moment. I've got a big tattoo on one side of my head, which is some people like to look at and go, whoo, she's got a big tattoo on one side of her head. And so I'm sitting in front of two big paintings, which weren't done by me. I have to say they were done by an artist called Mark Berryman. So I have Wiradjuri and Chinese heritage. And I'm very involved with my Aboriginal community. And I have, my cousins also have a mixed race background. They come from I come from also the first Chinese settlers in Australia. They come from the first lady from Madagascar in Australia. So we have a long history of arguing with people. I have lupus and I have chronic pain. I use a wheelchair on and off. So again, I get to argue with people who say, oh, but she can walk, I see you walking, so on and so forth. I'm a fibre artist and I also write. I have 3 books out of poetry. I'm a literary poet, and I run a free group in the Hunter and now in connection also with Coonabarabran in the central west of New South Wales for writers and artists with disability, because I think it's really important that we have free groups for people, because access is an issue for us, and every cent counts when you're on a pension. So that's my background. I don't always do everything right. I've worked in health and law, and I've worked as a peer worker in my career for a long time. So today I want to talk to you about my top 10 tips. I think we might start to share content at this point, if we can, Liz. So today I wanted to talk together with you. So on your screen, you've got the Accessible Arts logo. You've got Dion Beasley's Cheeky Dogs. Dion is a disabled artist who's from the Northern Territory. He gets around his community in his little wheelchair, and he does fantastic both fibre art and painting. Mostly if you've been to the Northern Territory, you will see the large numbers of cheeky dogs that roam around. So Dion's a very well-known Aboriginal artist. This one is his whimsical fabric toy dogs, and you can actually buy these if you go to a Homeland site. So the next, and he's well supported. Dion is deaf. Next slide, please. So this is my top 10 tips. You've already heard about me, and this is about working with Indigenous artists. Let's go, Liz. So I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. And by meeting, I mean virtually meeting. I am living on the Awabakal and Worimi people's land, and I also want to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and my own Wiradjuri elders and family. I want to invite people in the chat. I want to pay respects to other Indigenous people in the group and invite people in the chat to tell us what land they are living on and what country they are from. My grandmother used to say to people, "Where's your country? Who's your people?" And this was, for me, the first thing she would say to people: "Where's your country? Who's your people?" Because for her, nobody existed without their people. And this is really important thing for all people, I think. So if in the chat you could put who your people are, where your country is, that would be really helpful for me. Thank you. So Liz, next slide. There's a new study has come out. It came out this year, just in the last month. And it's easily found online. It's that 75% of Australians hold implicit bias against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. This doesn't mean necessarily that this is right up at the top of what they're thinking, but we need to be thinking more about how these biases and what we think of Aboriginal people, the same as what we think of disabled people, all the different layers of how that plays out. Do we think of disabled people and Aboriginal people as being poor? Do we think of them as being ill-educated, not contemporary? There's a whole range of things that are part of your bias. You know, for instance, Tara June Winch, who just won an amazing prize and lives in Paris and is a very fantastic Wiradjuri fiction writer. And I think people often, in the earlier part of her career, overlooked her outside of our community because she didn't write about what we think of as traditional Aboriginal topics. So that's part of the implicit bias. Are we asking Aboriginal or disabled people to only participate in Aboriginal or disabled issues? So that's a little something to hold in your head. Next slide, Miss Liz. So it's the conscious part. If you don't challenge it, don't think about it, not aware of it, then it can weigh on those decisions and how you behave. And I know at the moment there's a lot going on with demonstrations, with everything in the world. And this is something, it's very important that people challenge what's inside them. But it's not necessarily very important that you challenge all the Aboriginal people that you meet or all the disabled people that you meet for their opinion. I think that one of the things that's happening is people have to grapple with those feelings and, you know, in a sense, realise that these are issues they need to deal with themselves. One of the difficulties of being in an advocacy position, or for instance, being in I've never been in an Aboriginal identified position, but I've seen what happens when people are, and it can sometimes be a very difficult position. All the weight of expectation falls on people. So be careful that your unconscious bias and all that challenge isn't going outwards but is going inwards to yourself, that you're not challenging those around you. Next slide, Miss Liz. In terms of disability, there are some things that are true. Indigenous Australians aged 55 and over have a higher rate of disability. In fact, more than half aged 55 and over had some kind of disability, and 18% had a severe or profound disability. In fact, I'm 58 years old, and Indigenous Australian people are considered aged at 50. So, for instance, at the age of 50, one qualifies for aged care. And this is because the lifespan of Indigenous people, and particularly Indigenous men, is so much shorter. Some of this is around, particularly for men, has to do with imprisonment, and increasingly this is the case for women too. Women are increasingly being imprisoned for debt, and this has, being disabled has no effect on whether you're imprisoned or not. So disability, there is a greater burden, health burden for Aboriginal people of disability. And there's particular kinds of disability that are worse. Next slide, Liz, if you wouldn't mind. We have the highest rate of ear disease and hearing loss in the world. If anybody else grew up with a mum that you could swear at as long as her back was turned, this is a common thing, I think, for a lot of Aboriginal kids. Otitis media, or glue ear, is quite a common thing for Indigenous children. And it causes deafness at a very high rate. Having said that, it's given that Indigenous children often face greater discrimination and difficulty in schooling, you can understand that living with that disability while being Aboriginal can create greater social issues than should be faced. And when I say they're a social issue, disability is a social issue. The medical issue is not the issue, it's the social issue. It's how the world copes with you. How I am as a person with my pain, with my lack of mobility, with my need, I'm fragile, with all of those needs, it's a separate issue from how I am in the world with those needs. People often say, when I'm at home, I seem so well and I'm getting around okay. And of course, when I'm out, that's a different story. And that's because at home, my home is adapted to me. And I guess that's an illustration of how the difference between medical and social in terms of disability. So for me, at home, because I've been able to adapt my home, my disability doesn't seem particularly pervasive. But when I'm out in a place that isn't adapted for me and hasn't bothered to think outside of what is so-called normal, then I seem more disabled. And this is the case for a lot of people with a lot of different disabilities. And it's certainly the case for Aboriginal people in non-Indigenous organisations and when making calls, you know, when there's call outs for art, you know, for art shows and so on. And I'll go into that a little bit further when we do the 10 top tips. Next slide, please. There's two really important acts that actually govern all this. It's the Disability Act and the Anti-Discrimination Act. So you're actually not allowed to discriminate against people on the basis of their race, their religion, and you're also not allowed to discriminate against them on the basis of their disability. The only time you can discriminate against someone on their basis of their race is if it's an Aboriginal identified position. So for instance, my carers are Aboriginal, and that's a requirement that I have for them, and they're allowed to advertise those positions because it's a cultural requirement. So given that those acts are underpinning, it's kind of interesting why they're not followed maybe as often as they should be. So next slide, Liz. So this might put it a little bit, get to where we're going. So being Aboriginal is not a genre, because we're talking about the arts here, and disability is not a genre. Neither of these things are like science fiction or rap and I think sometimes as an artist, this is a little bit the kind of call outs that you get. Do you know, you hear it's Aboriginal art or disability art. I think that one of the things around identity for disabled people is that, I mean, I've been involved in a show, for instance, where our coordinator, we had a disabled group. We were an artist-run initiative, and everybody in the group was disabled, and we were looking for a venue. And when we applied to the venue, they said, we're not looking to do a disability show. And this, I think, underlines one of the difficulties for both Aboriginal people and people with disability is one is not a genre like, as I say, science fiction or rap or whatever. You should be able to be applying for every show in every kind of medium. And one of the difficulties we face is both the expectation of the content that we will be producing. So if you're Aboriginal, the notion that you'll be producing Aboriginal content addressing Aboriginality, or content addressing disability, or that you'll be included in an Aboriginal show or a disabled show, or that that venue will have already done a disabled show or included disability. And so this is a hindrance for people who are operating in this field, and that has to end. It's really important to keep this idea in your head, I think. if you're somebody who is running a venue. Next slide, Miss Liz. So there's some differences. Indigenous artists with and without disability earn about the same, which is really different from everywhere else. So we're all in the same boat. And I think that's, I'm not even going to pull that apart. I really want you to think about that yourself. There's something else I want you to think about in terms of Aboriginal artists and non-Aboriginal artists. Contemporary and traditional artists may have a different relationships to the story and visual content of the work. Some stories are owned culturally by groups, and unauthorised reproduction is offensive. I use Wiradjuri language in my writing at times. I go through the Parks Wiradjuri language group when I do. And this is because sometimes I need to check that I am using the right language for my gender. And that I have the approval to use this particular part of language and that it's correct. In some parts of the country, there are particular stories and that are handed down. There are particular stories and that, or practices that are belong to various clans or families. And it's important that that's recognized, that it's a different system. I think that it's very easy for people to grab something off the internet and reproduce it, or not just not get in touch with the artist. And it's really easy to get in touch with us generally. I can usually find someone within about 2 or 3 days. I think, and I think that that's important to remember who owns the work. Cultural appropriation is a very real thing for Aboriginal artists. So next slide, Miss Liz. So our top 10 tips. Thinking of the barrier, not the medical or physical side of things. So if you're in your Gautland, so this is if you're, you're doing a call out. Think of what the barrier might be. Not necessarily, and this is for audiences as well. Rather than thinking of just, have we got, you've got to think of, say, access for people with deaf people, access for people with physical disability, but also start to think about, do you have spaces that are appropriate for Aboriginal people to come to? Do you have just things that are awful or offensive in your spaces? Do you have some spaces that where people can perhaps be alone with work? And are you displaying things that are inappropriate to be displayed? These are some of the things that you might want to take advice about, and listen to your community for real and by acting for change. If you have these things in your galleries, do something about it. If you're performing practices where you have You know, it's great to have Aboriginal shows, but if you're performing practices where that is the only time you have Aboriginal artists in your gallery, and it's an all-white audience, which I have gone to a lot of shows which have had really important Aboriginal work and been the only Aboriginal person there, wondering why our local elders have not been there or done a welcome, and it's been quite disturbing to me, and have found out later that they didn't even know it was on. So act for change, and, you know, listen to the community. It's really important. Find out what they think. Maybe they don't mind, but, you know, get into your local Indigenous spaces and platforms. We have our own platforms. There's lots of Aboriginal groups, and like every group, people argue. There's lots of different points of view. See what's about, see who's working. Just because people are very light-skinned like me doesn't mean they're not Aboriginal. Just because somebody's very dark-skinned doesn't mean that they're from the deep country. Try and get outside your preconceptions and allow people to present their work to you for what it is. But get into your local Indigenous spaces, your local galleries, get to know who these people are, and find out. Our local gallery runs a disability arts group. And I think that's really important. Where they show is certainly not at the Newcastle Art Space, which is a huge shame. So help forge those connections. Next slide, please, Liz. Again, start at the top. Make some connections with your local area lands council, who may not be necessarily an artist, but these are usually people who have respect in the community. Ask them to be on your committee, or get an artist on your committee. Go out and ask. And if you get told no, try again. 5 is really important. Every space, every time. Welcome and invite through accessible arts and Indigenous networks, Indigenous and disabled audiences. There's a number of ways to do this. You can go through Carers New South Wales. I'm not sure if they still exist, but they certainly used to. There's lots of different groups that focus specifically on carers, on, you know, their e-groups, on carers, on disability, where you can put out your arts things through your library notice boards. You can put out your call outs. You can put out these things so that people can get to them and come in and see your stuff, especially now it's online. Having the contribution of people with disability to online work is going to be really important. And having the contribution of Indigenous people to online work is also really important. I saw something the other day that was amazing for poetry. So it was spoken word, but it had no captioning of any kind, and it was just, if you closed your eyes, it was just all music. You would never have known it was poetry. And it's really important that disabled people are in this zone and that Indigenous people are in this zone. So make sure every space, every time, welcome, invite. Make sure that if you get these invitations, put them back out into your community. Don't be shy. Next slide, Miss Liz. Look, know your country. What's going on? What are the celebrations and significance in your area? In New South, you know, we have the Koori Knockout, which is the big footy thing. And, you know, if you are running an event and you're going to run it on the weekend of the Koori Knockout, that no Koori person is going to come to your event, disabled or not, because it's the Koori Knockout. It's huge. It's a huge way of people getting together. And, you know, Newcastle won last year, so we're very excited. NAIDOC Week, which this year is this week, but has been put off until November because of COVID. Mabo Day. In Newcastle, we have the Matara Festival. In the country you're living in, you will have other local festivals, get-togethers, Sorry Day. Being conscious of cross-programming conflicts is respect. Okay? If you send out an invitation and you've decided to put your opening on the day of the biggest opening on the Koori calendar, it's just rude. So try and understand what's happening in your area as well. 7, it's not all about you. Can you broker a partnership with community to run an Auslan supported tour for their mob? Reach out and ask how you can be more accessible. Lots of LALCs, which is local Aboriginal Lands Councils, also run kindergartens and programs for elderly people. Sometimes they would really like to both bring the artistic talents and knowledge of those people into your gallery, but also bring those people in and have maybe a tour. You might be able to help broker a partnership to, say, have an Auslan supported tour or some other supported tour, but negotiate and find out what's needed in that community and see if you can work together to make something more accessible in a way that's meaningful to your local community. Okay? And by doing that, it also helps community artists who are involved in those communities doing that work to work back in their own communities and showcase themselves, especially young people. These can be great opportunities for young people to be working alongside bigger exhibitions. So next. Inclusion in the arts, it takes time, so be patient and keep coming back. I hear a lot of people saying things like, oh, we tried and then we didn't hear back. And sometimes you've just gone through the wrong person or someone's left a position. You've got to keep going. Community takes time. It's important to let people know that you're going to be there and it's not just about you ticking a box. It's about you wanting to have a meaningful relationship that's going to benefit the Aboriginal community and also be respectful of disability and go both ways. And to do that, you're going to have to be there to show respect and to learn. The 9th one is ask your experts. The training is there. And make it a priority. You can buy in this training from various groups. There's some fantastic stuff around. There's some great stuff that's heaps of fun. Talking in Colour is a beautiful one with weaving and learning some traditional craft. There's lots of good stuff, and you might have local artists as well with disability who might want to put together a little training or come and talk to you and interact with your group. And so do some training and find out for yourself. It never hurts. And the 10th one's really important. Feedback and yarn ups. Find out if you are reaching your audiences. If you're not collecting Aboriginality, then you should be. I think it's really important. You need to know if you are reaching an Aboriginal audience and if you are reaching Aboriginal artists in your call outs. You need to know this, because if you're not, then you need to do better, because it needs to be an important part of what you do. We're an important part of the culture of this country, and it should be part of the work to make sure that we are able to be included, and given that we have a higher rate of disability, that disability is not in the way of us being included as an add-on to the already thorny issue. One of the things that I know people say is, well, when I go to an all Aboriginal, like a yarn up, sometimes I feel, you know, a bit uncomfortable. I might be the only white person there, or not very many. Everyone knows each other. Well, to you, I would say, that's how we feel. Do you know, often that's how people feel when they go to any event that is outside their normalized social role. And that's a good feeling. It's a really good thing to learn something different. And it's this kind of thing that's going to be really helpful for people. There's a lot going on in the world at the moment. I think acknowledging, encouraging, not taxing people about their identity all the time. There's enough of this going on. I've got a doll. I make dolls and fibre art, and I've got my doll which is part Aboriginal. Couldn't get any further, because these things really, you know, people can get really hung up on labels, and I think that's not what listening's all about. Yarn ups take as long as they take as well. If you are an organisation and you are invited to yarn up, I have one further suggestion for you. Do not organise another meeting after it. It's really rude, I think, to go to a yarn up and then expect to leave, you know, schedule an hour and 15 minutes and then leave. because it just looks like you're leaving in the middle of it. So if you're going to a yarn up, make it your last thing for the day. So next slide, Liz. We do have, Aboriginal people do have our own disability Indigenous arts group. It's called Noonaron. It's the fpdn.org.au, and the Indigenous Disability Arts Group is Noonaron. Noonaron is also on Facebook and on Instagram, and they're pretty cool.